The Atlanta Braves have made their first major addition of the offseason, bringing in Jurickson Profar on a 3-year, $42 million deal. Anthony Santander's deal becomes official along with Tanner Scott. We have some new rumors detailing Pete Alonso with the Toronto Blue Jays. And could Alex Bregman ultimately re-sign with the Houston Astros? All that and more ahead here at The Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a busy Thursday in baseball. Lots to get to, so let's dig right in. First, the move of the day that was actually done today was Jurickson Profar to the Atlanta Braves. All offseason, they were looking for a corner outfield bat that it could at least start the season with the Atlanta Braves playing every single day, that they would have some really good production, possibly a leadoff hitter type. Jurickson Profar fits all of those to a T, and with his positional flexibility, when Acuna is ready to take an everyday role in that outfield once again, he can easily be shifted to a fourth outfielder role, or gives guys a day off in the infield all over the diamond. So great signing for Atlanta. Deal is for $42 million, $12 million the first year, $15 million the second and third years. But what this deal does, it gives them some flexibility in that infield and in the outfield, and saves them a little bit of money to add to that bullpen or the back into the starting rotation. I would not expect them to be a fit any longer for any of the top flight options out there. Anything over, say, $5 million is probably out of the Atlanta Braves' budget right now. We'll see what they do the rest of this offseason, but I think their big spending is now done. The other news that we got today, Pete Alonso is in advanced talks with the Toronto Blue Jays. A deal is not quote-unquote imminent, but they are advancing as far as getting these talks to closer numbers to what Pete Alonso is looking for. I still expect a deal to come to fruition there. The Mets were seen as the front runner all offseason long until ultimately They just decided not to spend the money on him. Now, could we see him return to the New York Mets anyway? Possibly. I wouldn't put a 0% chance on it, at least at the moment. But as far as the New York Mets are concerned, it seems like they've moved on to other fish in the sea this offseason. Now, for the Blue Jays, they're trying to get any number of big key free agents that are still out there. Bregman, they're still in the running there. They're still in the running, obviously, for Pete Alonso. They had some rumors today, once again, connecting them to Max Scherzer. They're looking for another starting pitcher in that lineup. Scherzer could be that guy. They could bring in Jack Flaherty and Nick Pivetta. I'd expect one of those starters to ultimately end up in a Blue Jays uniform to begin the year, and one of Alonso and Bregman to ultimately end up there as well. Now, again, how this offseason will be judged is whether or not they get that contract extension done with Vlad Guerrero or not. So we'll see. Still an incomplete for the Blue Jays, but it's still a far better sight than what it was, say, 3 weeks ago when they really hadn't done anything so far this offseason, had missed out on Juan Soto, and had missed out on Roki Sasaki. Now they brought in Jeff Hoffman. They brought in Anthony Santander, whose deal became official today. That deal had $61 million in deferrals of a $92 million contract over 5 years. Just incredible, the amount of deferrals that we're seeing this offseason, not just by the Dodgers, but by a plethora of teams out there as well. All right, let's catch up on a few of these comments here and get into the other news of the day. Welcome in Holly, Roy, Rafe, Cowboys Nation. Appreciate you joining us once again. Orioles have cheap owners. Then they want a cap. I'll put it this way. The Orioles are in a smaller market. They have less financial resources than some of the other big market teams. So, again, I don't really like the word cheap when you have those types of things in front of them. Now, the Orioles ownership there has said they're willing to spend. I think it's still Mike Elias that's keeping them from spending at the top of the market for some starting pitching. Namely, Corbin Burnes is the guy I thought they should have brought back because they need a number one at the head of that rotation. If you're not going to re-sign Corbin Burnes, I don't think you have the stomach for the contract of what Burnes is going to sign for in the event that he leaves in free agency when you make the trade for him a year ago, then why do you make the trade? Why lose the long-term assets to bring in Corbin Burnes? Why not give up a little bit more to get somebody under contract for 2, 3, 4, 5 years of control, rather than a guy who's destined for free agency that you're not comfortable with the free agent numbers there. So, again, head-scratching moves for Mike Elias and that front office, but I wouldn't necessarily blame the owners as far as their financial situation. Yes, they're in a small market. They can't control that. Yes, the TV deal for them kind of sucks. They can't control that either, at least the way it's done right now. They've tried and failed to fix it, and there's really no changing at this point. As far as the ownership, having deeper pockets than Steve Cohen, I suppose if you had Steve Cohen as your owner, you would be able to spend more money. But the Orioles have been a well-run organization for the last 10, 15 years, back with Buck Showalter, Manny Machado, Adam Jones, that group of players. Then they kind of went through a rebuild process over the last 5 years or so. And now they've got the good young prospects coming, Gunnar Henderson, Holiday. They've got Adley Rutschman on the current roster. But the one big hole on their roster right now is still a number one at the front of that rotation. And they've struggled to solve it. And until they do, I'm going to have my questions, not for the ownership there, but for the front office and for Mike Elias. All right, Roy, Cowboys Nation, find us a coach, then come back and talk losing Oriole baseball. As far as the Cowboys, boy, oh boy, did we get some news as far as what we could see for the Dallas Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer, really hoping he doesn't get the head coaching gig, but yikes. I think they got kind of the news, all the backlash that a lot of the media was giving them about the possibility of them signing Schottenheimer as their head coach, and ultimately decided, maybe we should pump the brakes on this one. I think public pressure really influenced Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones on this one. We'll see if they ultimately turn to Dion now, that they really need to get some legitimacy in that head coaching role. Rafe, Bregman really about to be an Astro again, shaking my head. I think it's a possibility. Bregman actually reached out to Houston, not the other way around. Now, Houston has had the same offer on the table the entire offseason, 6 for $156. Whether or not they've raised their offer, whether or not they've adjusted a little bit, now that they brought in Isaac Paredes and Christian Walker, remains to be seen. But the fact that Bregman reached out tells me that some of the offers that he's getting, i.e. from the Detroit Tigers, are not quite what he was looking for. and that Toronto still has a certain amount of instability there with Vlad Guerrero not signed long term. Maybe he just doesn't want to play in Canada. I still think Boston is a good option for him, but the front office had their reservations there. Maybe they're only offering him a high AAV over a shorter term contract. But I still think Bregman's in line to do very well this offseason. Now, let's say that Houston has a legitimate chance to bring back Bregman. Would he sign 6 for 156? I still think they would say no to something like that. I think that Bregman's camp would say no, that is. Now, if Houston were to say jump that up to say 6 for 170, then you could argue it's a better deal than what Willie Adames got, 7 for 182. It's basically a $12 million difference there. Maybe they could even do a club option on the backside of it or a player option to kind of give him that 7th year to beat the Willie Adames contract overall as far as total value. Maybe some incentives could be in there as well. But the Astros really like to stick to their numbers. So, maybe if they can just bump it up by, say, 3, 4, 5 million, or I'd say $3 or $4 million, I think would get the job done and at least give it enough of a justification for Bregman to re-sign there. The question is, where would he fit on this roster? You're going to have, Pena at shortstop. You still got Altuve at second. Now you've brought in Christian Walker at first base. Isaac Paredes, I suppose you could flex to an outfield spot. He has played the outfield before in Tampa Bay. Maybe you put Bregman back over there at third base and put Paredes out there where Kyle Tucker was. That would be the one way I could see this really working. Either that or you put Alvarez permanently at the DH spot and put Paredes out there and left. But that would be one way Houston could make that work from a positional standpoint. But interesting to see that Bregman's back in negotiations with the Houston Astros. Still thinking he leans more towards the Blue Jays or Red Sox offer. But I find it very curious that it's Bregman's camp, and Bregman specifically, who had reached out to Houston about possibly re-signing there. That means it's less, or it's not necessarily a 1% chance. I think it's got some legs, and if the other two teams in the running here, or other three teams if you count the Tigers, 4 if you count the dark horse Chicago Cubs, if they don't step up their offers, he very well may end up back with the Houston Astros, and the Astros, to me, that type of a signing there would be exactly what that team really needs to put them on top in the AL West. Now, the AL West, they're still trying to figure out their closer situation in Texas. Seattle's still trying to figure out their offense right now. Texas missed out on bringing back Kirby Yates, still waiting to see what the official numbers are on his deal, but very curious to see where Texas goes as far as a closer option. I read a few articles today about Kyle Finnegan, who had a great first half last year, but after the All-Star break, he was just absolutely abysmal. In 21 appearances, he gave up runs in 9 of those appearances, had a 6.5 ERA over the second half of the year. He was just awful. And it wasn't just that his batted ball luck was worse. His strikeout rate dipped, his walk rate, doubled anyway. Just his numbers in the second half just looked very poor. And for the Texas Rangers, who don't necessarily want to spend, say, $15 million on a closer this year, I wonder if he's the type of closer that, hey, they give him a chance to solidify himself once again in that closer role. But they like the options that they have as far as youth options on that roster. Mark Church, among others, that could fill in at closer. Josh Sborz will be back around the All-Star break. He has closing experience, and as long as he's healthy, he could hold it down as far as a veteran. Then, of course, they could go about a trade deadline acquisition. But I wonder if the Rangers circle around to Kyle Finnegan as a short-term answer in the closer role. And if he does great, obviously he stays there. But if he doesn't, if he falters, then they quickly make the decision and move on to guys like Mark Church and others. Just another thing to kind of keep in mind in the AL West. Evening MLB fam, Holly, a cap will never happen, but I see something happening with deferrals. I definitely see something with deferrals. I would say something in the neighborhood of like $100 million at any given time for any deferrals total is what the owners are really going to try to push for and see if they can kind of close that loophole through the when it comes to competitive balance and when it comes to taxes, those kinds of things as well. Roy, Braves have a better lineup than the Mets. Better pitching as well. Pitching, they are a little bit top-heavy for me, for Atlanta. They still need a little bit more relief help, in my opinion. They're trying to, thread the needle, if you will. They have a good closer. They have some interesting options in the setup role and in the middle relief. That's where I really think they're going to have to address that bullpen by adding a couple guys there. One name to keep in mind that I think could help them at the back end of that rotation if they have some guys falter there, and in a long relief role out of that bullpen would be Jose Urena, who had a great year with Texas last year, got blown up in about 3 or 4 different appearances, but other than that, his numbers were really solid. I would keep an eye out for the Atlanta Braves pursuing a deal with Jose Urena or a pitcher very similar to him. Jurickson Profar really, made some swing adjustments last year. That was one of the biggest reasons for his success that we saw last year. In general, Jurickson Profar, by the way, just kind of full disclosure here, one of my favorite players that I've ever seen anyway. Not saying he's the greatest or anything like that, but just one of my favorites. But Jurickson Profar has always been a more mercurial talent. Just like bullpen guys, one year he'll be great, the next year he'll struggle. We saw that a couple of years ago with the Padres. We had a great year, went into the free agency, ended up signing with the Colorado Rockies, did not work out well, ended up signing a one-year deal with the San Diego Padres this past offseason, and ultimately performed very well and has parlayed that into a 3-year, $42 million contract with Jurickson Profar and the Atlanta Braves. Now, like I said, he's going to start the season as their everyday outfielder for about a month until Acuna is ready to go. Probably be their leadoff hitter as well in that role. And if he has a great first month of the season, I expect him to be in the everyday lineup, kind of moving all over the diamond. Play first one day, play third base another day, second another, play short another day, play right field another day, and just let him play every single spot during the week and give those guys a day off their feet. I think that's going to work out really well, especially with Acuna coming back from injury. Albies had some injury issues last year as well. The Braves are looking for an improvement at shortstop, so this doubles as insurance if Arcia struggles this year as well, and gives them another option next year if they don't have the financial resource that they're hoping for to add another shortstop at that time anyway. So overall, just love the move from top to bottom. Every bit of it works for now for the Atlanta Braves and for the future. And by the way, for Jurickson Profar to go from a $1 million contract with the San Diego Padres to get a 3-year guarantee. We expected somewhere around 3 for 30, 3 for 35 on the high end. He gets 3 for 42. Just congratulations to Jurickson Profar. He's finally got that contract he's been looking for his entire career. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of money when you compare it to Juan Soto. Still a hell of a lot more money than I'll ever see. But that's a great contract for a player who's really deserved it. Been struggled to find a place as far as an everyday home in somebody's lineup, and has finally found some success in kind of that utility outfielder, utility infielder, Ben Zobrist type of a role, and he's finally getting paid for it. So congratulations to Jurickson Profar. Very happy for the guy, and hoping he has a great season with the Atlanta Braves. One of my favorite teams as a kid when I was growing up. I know a lot of you guys feel the same way when you watch them on TBS every single day. I still think Major League Baseball is missing an opportunity to do that again with another team out there. Put them on some type of a cable network that's on every single person's ability to have them over the air. Now, of course, TV rights, regional networks, might have an issue with that kind of a thing, but having a team like that would really be great for the sport and just allow a fan base to really grow and just allow the entire country, just to kind of get behind a team and grow the sport organically by following that one team. Alrighty, let's catch up on a few of these comments here. As far as your comment there, Roy, Braves having a better lineup than the Mets, I still think the Braves and Mets are very comparable as far as a lineup. As far as the rotations, I think they're very close as well. I think the bullpen is a little bit better on the Mets side because I think Atlanta still has a little bit more work to do. But everything kind of hinges on how Acuna returns for the Braves. If he doesn't return to the form that we expect him to, then I'd lean more the Mets lineup. If he performs at the level I'm expecting Acuna to, then maybe I'd give a slight edge to the Braves. But the Braves are doing all of these things on a kind of very thin margin of error right now. The Mets, meanwhile, have Steve Cohen. If things aren't working out at the trade deadline, they can go out and buy whoever they want, take on whatever big contract some other team doesn't want, and just see what they can do with it. That's the kind of the advantage of having Steve Cohen and that situation with the Mets versus what the Atlanta Braves have to work with. Sean, will the Cubs trade for Ryan Pressly? That was another rumor we saw today, is that the Chicago Cubs have been talking with the Houston Astros today about a trade for Ryan Pressly. Now, Pressly would have to waive his no-trade clause to do so. There's no indication that he will do it or that he's given any indication to the Houston Astros that he would for the Chicago Cubs. However, it's been well publicized that they're looking to get underneath the tax threshold, and Pressly is the one guy that would be easiest to move that they could get some value back in return for. Right now they're at about 244 as far as a luxury tax payroll, and the threshold is 241. Presley makes about $14 million, so trading him away, if they don't bring back any salary, would get them under by about $11 million, which would allow them to bring in somebody else for that outfield. Now, of course, if they bring in Alex Bregman, they would completely blow past that threshold, so kind of keep that in mind as you're hearing these rumors around Alex Bregman as well. That Houston Astros front office is going to have some work to do if they sign him and still want to get underneath that threshold. They're going to have to figure out how some creative ways to dip their salary down underneath that. But as far as the Cubs, they've been well publicized as far as looking for some closing options. Remember, they finished second for Tanner Scott. They offered 4 for 66. Ultimately, he did not take that deal. They were in the running for Kirby Yates. Again, misses the opportunity there. They've been connected anyway to Carlos Estevez as well. But now we're seeing the Cincinnati Reds dip their toe into that market. The Detroit Tigers are in the market for him, as well as Ryan Presley. But we'll see where the Cubs go as far as a closer. But I think their top priority, unquestionably right now, is adding a high-leverage reliever, whether that be a Kenley Jansen, a Craig Kimbrell, a Carlos Estevez, or possibly a Ryan Presley trade or a Ryan Helsley trade. Those are some names to keep in mind for the Chicago Cubs fans among us as far as where they might go for a relief pitcher. Cowboys Nation, Dave has spent the money. I think the issue has and is all the overbidding and then the owners deferring it to the next 10 years. That's kind of my point as well. I think the ownership group there has done a nice job at flexing up the budget as they can with this good team that they built. But with the way teams have really, spent this offseason and with the hesitation from Mike Elias more than anything else, that I think is the biggest reason why they didn't re-sign Corbin Burnes or sign another top-flight starting pitcher to take his place, or trade for a bidder or for a longer-term contract as well. Just because you free up the money doesn't mean you have to spend it. I understand that. But Mike Elias understood that when he made the trade for Corbin Burnes, he was going to be a free agent in a year. And that's my issue. You spent the prospects. You knew what the cost was going to be when he was going to be headed towards free agency. You had to be comfortable either A, losing him for nothing in free agency if you get competitive balance or competitive compensation pick or whatever, so be it. But my goodness, this is kind of an ongoing problem for the Baltimore Orioles, and they need to resolve that. They bring in Jack Flaherty, don't re-sign him. They bring in Corbin Burnes, don't re-sign him. Now their prospect pool is around 19th in the industry. I've seen a couple publications where they're in the early 20s. They're no longer the number one farm system in the game, and their top prospects now are blocked by players on the Major League roster. Basayo, their catcher, maybe they could move him and bring in, a top-flight starting pitcher. That's one option. But, of course, Adley Rutschman is not going to be behind the plate forever. Maybe you bring him up and allow him to play, get some minutes at catcher and just see what you have, and just kind of roll with the development there, and just try to have one of the greatest catching tandems in the game. But again, back to the bigger point here, they just have not spent on starting pitching, and until they figure out what they're going to do at the top of that rotation, I'm going to have an issue with the Orioles and how they built this roster. I think they'll get one. I think they'll add a starting pitcher. I think they'll add a number one type starter. Somebody in the Pablo Lopez, Sandy Alcantara, Dylan Cease, Luis Castillo, Framber Valdez category. But until they do, I'm going to have questions about that Orioles team. Rafe, imagine Presley just don't waive his no-trade clause and makes the Astros just eat that contract. Well, it's not a bad contract. It's only got 1 year left. But at $14 million for an eighth-inning setup guy, when you're already paying $20 million to Josh Hader, that's a little bit untenable. So I think Presley would waive that no-trade if he had the option to close again. He actually voiced his displeasure about being removed from the closer role just because they spent the money on Josh Hader. I get it. Presley's a little bit older. You don't think he's got a long-term career still ahead of him. Hader's a little bit younger, so they give him the 5-year deal at, $95 million? Just crazy money to give to a free agent that they had not had before. Remember, this is the same team that decided, hey, we don't want to bring back Garrett Cole. We don't want to bring back Justin Verlander. We don't want to bring back Carlos Correa. We don't want to bring back George Springer. And on the list goes because it's going to cost too much money. And then they go out and bring in a free agent reliever for a closer spot that they already have filled up on a short-term contract in Ryan Presley. Their bullpen was already a solid option there. I guess they're trying to shorten the game a little bit, really have one of the most dynamic bullpens in the game. It didn't work out in the first half. Second half, it worked out a lot better. But I think Presley was unhappy to be removed from that role and would be happy to have that opportunity once again. Cowboys Nation, and we will never have a true head coach allowed to run the show as long as Jerry's alive. Last one, he did let go, grabbed 3 titles, and he was fired. Talking about Jimmy there, I mean, I get the frustration Cowboys fans have with Jerry Jones as far as how he wants his coach to act and how he wants him to run the team. He wants to be the guy that builds the team that wins the championship. He's the owner. He gets the right to do that. Just like if he was the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, or if he was the owner of the Green Bay Packers, or if he was the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He would get to do that if he was the owner of any of those other teams as well. I think because they're the Dallas Cowboys, because they put all that pressure on themselves when they did the how about them Cowboys stuff with Jimmy Johnson, the Michael Irvin, the triplets era, they put a lot of pressure of, kind of setting the standard for success, and they have not lived up to it ever since Jimmy's been gone. Now, they've had some good coaches in between there. Bill Parcells was a good one, but it just hasn't worked out. And if you go all the way down the rabbit hole of the Brian Schottenheimer route, I'm sure it will work out better than fans think it will, but it's nowhere near what the expectation has become around the Dallas Cowboys, which is still continuing to try to do excellent things, and that hire would not be an excellent thing. Now, are they a Super Bowl champion over the last 30 years? No. Are they a team that gets the NFC Championship game either? No. In fact, they're the worst team at that in the NFC right now, the longest drought to get to the NFC Championship game, and I don't think Brian Schottenheimer is the coach that's going to overcome that. Alrighty. Try to catch up on a few of these comments. Got quite a few of them that have rolled in here. All right, Roy, folks don't realize no matter what changes are made, Dodgers will work within the rules. The Orioles could defer to upgrade their team. Why let Burns go? I don't think the Orioles would have done the deferrals the same way the other teams have because, again, those would be long-term contracts on their books. Future years where them being in a smaller market, those deferrals would actually hurt them a lot more than some of these other teams. So in those lean years, when you're going through a struggling season where you need to add somebody at the trade deadline because you'd have those deferred contracts, they're a team that wouldn't be able to make that type of investment because of the deferred contracts. Meanwhile, in the years where the deferrals start to kick in for the Dodgers, they will still be able to manage their roster and handle the deferrals and add at the trade deadline. The Orioles would not have that same luxury, so it's a little bit different. Kind of apples and steak. Just two very different situations. As far as, why did they let Burns go? Again, that's just a head scratcher for me. If you're not going to sign him long term, why make the trade? And I guess that's the biggest problem I have with it. I get it from an asset management standpoint. They might have viewed the pieces that they were giving away, the compensation pick, etc., as a comparable consolation prize, I suppose, for 1 year of Corbin Burns. But for me, the lack of talent now in that farm system is a direct result of continuing to trade for rental options rather than long-term contracts or reinvesting that money in free agency. You got to do one of the two, and they chose option C, neither. That hasn't worked, and until they fix that, I'm going to have an issue with Mike Elias until they add a number 1. You blame Elias for Burns personally. I do as well. Cowboys Nation, dude has never liked signing guys over 30 to multi-year deals. True, but there's a few teams that are in that same boat. But the situation that the Orioles are in, they have a great team right now. Now is the time to push the money to the middle. Go all in, as they say in poker, and just commit yourself. This is the time to build your roster out, spend the money while your guys are young, rather than as your guys get older, then you have to rely on those young guys coming up from your minor league system, which, by the way, are nowhere near the level of which these guys are right now. And so you're not going to be able to maintain this level of success for years. So that's the reason why they should be investing right now. Rafe, Rangers never made a formal offer to Yates. Isn't really that surprising to me, to be honest. Formal offer, as in like 4 years, $60 million, something like that. Obviously, I don't really mind that one. But as far as them being interested in Yates, he was their number 1 priority up until he signed with the Dodgers. I think the writing was on the wall, though, that he was looking for, 1, a great contract after we saw the crazy numbers that we saw for A.J. Minter, Jose Leclerc, Tanner Scott. We knew the price of poker for Yates went up by about $6 or $7 million, whereas before I thought Yates was probably going to get at best a 1-year $14 million deal or a 2-year $21, $22 million deal like A.J. Minter got. After those guys got significantly better deals, I think it became very obvious Yates was going to do better than that. Either that or he's going to go to a situation where he could guarantee himself a run at another World Series, and he might take a little bit of a team-friendly contract to do so. We still don't know what the contract terms are for Yates, but I'm expecting it to be a pretty good contract, and deferrals in there, signing bonus, whatever. But the Rangers are still looking for a closer, and I would expect them to look at Kyle Finnegan in free agency, Carlos Estevez, Kenley Jansen. On the trade market, Ryan Helsley, Duran, some of the guys from the Padres as well, Suarez and Adam, are the ones I would be looking at as well. Cowboys Nation, Toronto expanding to the league in the late 70s, and the Nats recently killed our market. Yes, the TV, the TV market there for the Orioles, the Nationals, etc. All of that kind of really jumbled things up in that area. I would like to see MLB come up with a better way to come up with the regional broadcasting rights for teams. At a certain point, I think they'll solve the issue and allow all of the nation, all of the world really, to see every single team. I mean, you can see them all if you're out of a certain region, if you get the MLB.TV package. I think there'll be something like that with MLB.TV that lets you see your in your region game. So, for instance, the Rangers, for instance, for me would be the team I would get to watch locally. So I don't get them on MLB TV. They would be blacked out for me because they want me to view it on their linear option cable, whatever. I think MLB will eventually close that issue, but for right now, Orioles are certainly being hindered by that as well. Sean, will the Cubs trade for Ryan Pressly, or do they just sign a closer? I think they're probably going to end up signing a guy. I think Ryan Pressly is a little bit higher of a deal, and I think Detroit is a little bit better of a fit as well for Ryan Pressly. So I think the Cubs end up with a Kenley Jansen, Carlos Estevez, Craig Kimbrell, Kyle Finnegan type of pitcher. If they get a trade done for Pressly, great. But I think the Tigers, for me, are the leader in the clubhouse right now because, again, the ties to Houston, etc., really are abound there. I think A.J. Hinch would really love to have a guy like Ryan Pressly. If they don't get Ryan Pressly in Detroit, then they would probably go the free agent route as well. Let's see here. Could Kellen Moore be the Cowboys coach? Yes, he could. I would probably put him as the number 2 option right now. I don't think Schottenheimer's going to be signed as the head coach, at least at this point, because of the way the public really reacted to the news that he was going to be signed as the next head coach. I think public pressure really stopped that from happening. Cowboys Nation, I can't see the league dodging a stoppage in 27. At least right now, it looks very bleak for the 27 season not to have some type of delay, some type of a stoppage, and that's a shame because there are so many big-ticket items that MLB and the Players Association have really dragged their feet on, and they have no one else to blame but themselves. The last time we had a work stoppage, or at least a delay anyway, to start the season a few years ago, the sticking point there was the international draft, and the MLB, the owners and so forth came out and said, hey, we'll figure this out, but we want to start the season, so as long as we resolve this issue within the first month, we're cool. They gave an extension to the All-Star break. They still didn't get it done. And then they said, we'll postpone it till the end of the season and discuss it at that point. Obviously, that's never been solved. And now we have the deferral question. Now we have questions about the posting system, on-field rules, salary cap issues, and on the list of major ticket items go. Usually when you get to a CBA negotiation, if you have 5 or more big ticket items, you're headed for some type of work stoppage. And until they solve some of these issues, right now I count like 12 different ones that are big ticket items that they're going to have to resolve, we could be headed for a work stoppage and will likely be headed for one as well. Rafe, I'm hoping and praying the Tigers just say F it and give Breggy the bag. I'm kind of hoping for that as well. I think he'd be a great solution for them long term. I get their hesitation after the negative long-term contracts that they had in Miguel Cabrera, in Javi Baez, in Jordan Zimmerman. How many times can a team be bit by bad contracts over and over and over again before they quote-unquote learn their lesson, I guess is the wisdom there. So maybe that's the biggest reason why they're not giving Bregman the deal. Or option number 2 is that they would rather save the money and get rid of the Javi Baez deal, then at that point spend in free agency. So I'm really hoping for Tigers fans that it's not the second option. I'm just hoping that they're just a little bit hesitant and gun shy, because all it would take is just getting over that fear of that contract working out or not working out, and then you could get that deal done. I still expect Bregman to do very well in free agency. I don't think he's going to take a 1-year, $8 million deal. Houston has had a standing offer all offseason long of 6 for $156. I think he beats that offer. I think he ultimately beats Willy Adames' offer as well. Cowboys Nation, I'd like to see him anywhere but the AL East, Rafe. Talking about the Blue Jays and Red Sox still being in the running for Bregman, I get it. As an Oriole fan, that makes some sense anyway. I'd like to see him anywhere but the AL West. As a Ranger fan, I see that one as well. But for me, Bregman's he's not a bad dude. He's committed to the craft. He's a constant workaholic, trying to work on his craft as far as a hitter. Really love that about Bregman, and I think whichever team gets him, I think they'll appreciate that to his game as well. I think he'd be good for some of the younger players that come up from the minors wherever he goes, because I think just like Jock Peterson for the Rangers, he just loves to talk hitting, and I think Bregman would have the same kind of impact wherever he signs. Welcome in, John. Appreciate you joining us once again. Brandon, thank you for joining us as well. Will the Yankees get a player for third base or second base? Still the same pretty much answer around the Yankees. No real rumors around the Yankees at the moment, but they continue to be dealing with the Stroman contract, trying to find a taker for that, and I think that's their priority right now. Trying to offload that deal, add a left-handed bullpen option back there, and kind of see what they can work in back there as well. But as far as a second baseman, third baseman option, I think that'll be the last thing they get done before we get to spring training. Rafe, it's fine. I'm not worried about the Angels at the moment. They are looking for a big splash, so if he's looking for a big contract, maybe they could do another, Anthony Rendon type contract. We've seen how well that worked out for the Angels. But again, I have my hesitation, or my thoughts on what the Angels should be doing this offseason, and I understand the way Artie Moreno is thinking. It's just completely wrong for how to build a baseball team, and I hope they come to their senses there. Brandon, what do you think about the potential Jays, Padres mega trade at the deadline if the Toronto is in the running? Let's see here. Rumor was Bo for a rise and then other pieces for Cease. That'd be a big trade. Speaking of Dylan Cease, I wanted to touch on the rumors around the Minnesota Twins. We discussed this at the very end of the video last night. They were connected to Christian Vazquez. That trade makes some sense. Twins looking to offload Christian Vazquez, create some roster flexibility to be able to bring up the Diego Cartaya, who's once a former number one prospect for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They want to get him some playing time this year. To do that, they'd have to offload Christian Vazquez. Padres are looking for some catching. Obviously, the Twins would have to eat a little bit of that deal, but by trading him, they'd save themselves at least a little bit of money, get at least some small asset back in return, and it'd be a win-win for both sides. Now, the bigger thing there is Dylan Cease. Twins are looking to upgrade that rotation. They're not looking to take on big salaries, though. So remember, they're trying to sell this team, so they don't want any big changes to the payroll structure. I would love to see what the Twins do once they do get a new owner in there, as far as at the trade deadline and in the offseason. But this is a team that kind of needs to wind things down, go through a full rebuild, kind of just charge forward after that. Until they do so, I think the Twins are going to continue to kind of be around that 80, 82 win mark, which is not exactly where you want to be. You're not good enough to get in the playoffs and make a deep run. You're not bad enough to get good draft position, so you're going to be stuck in the middle for years to come, and that's a tough spot to be in Major League Baseball or any sport. As to the rumors with the Jays and Padres, not a bad deal, honestly, but again, how many more middle infielders can the San Diego Padres continue to add? I suppose Bo Bichette would be the replacement for a rise in that infield, but they already have Bogarts, they already have Machado, they already have Cronenworth, they have a rise right now. They had Kim last year, but he's still a free agent at the moment. I suppose Bo would find some of those at-bats in the infield, but I don't see a natural fit in the trade there. So I'd kind of move on from that type of conversation. I think a rise will be moved at some point because I don't think they'll come to terms on a long-term deal. And the Padres are notorious for getting themselves out of expiring deals. We saw that with Juan Soto. I think we'll see that once again here with Luis Arraez. Let's see here. Mike, Jack Flaherty to Tigers, yes or no? I think the Tigers are certainly in the running. The teams that I would kind of peg as the favorites right now, scratch out the Atlanta Braves. I thought they would have been a good option, but after spending on Jerks and Profar, they don't have the money for it. So the Cubs, I'd say, as a dark horse here, but I think the Blue Jays are probably the favorite. The Red Sox had kicked the tires on it. I don't think they're necessarily a fit anymore after adding 3 starters to their rotation. Detroit makes some sense because they're still looking to add a little bit to their rotation as well. There were some rumors connecting him to the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't buy them, at least at the moment. But I think Toronto is probably the favorite for Flaherty at the moment. So I would guess I would lean more no on that one, Mike. Brandon, trying to catch up on some of these comments, so I apologize if I'm a little behind. In the running for the playoffs. If they're in the running for the playoffs, I guess is the end of your question there about the Jays and Padres saga there. If the Jays are out of it, I think their priority would be, if they haven't got an extension done of Vlad, to talk to Vlad and see if they can get a long-term deal signed during the season, or if he's really open and just looking forward to signing in the offseason. If not, which is more than likely going to be the case if they haven't signed him before spring training, then they're going to have to look to the long-term future of the club, and I think at that point they'd have to discuss really seriously about trading Vlad Guerrero Jr. It won't happen before the season, but if they're out of playoff contention, say they're 8-9 games out of the wild card at the All-Star break, then we could see them trade Vlad Guerrero Jr. As far as Bo Bichette, I'm sure they're discussing contract extensions with him as well, but his contract range is all over the place. He could get something in the neighborhood of like 3 for 30 if he has another terrible year this year. If things go great for him, he could beat the Willy Adames contract. Heck, he might get 10 years at $30 million if he has a truly great year. That's kind of the range for him right now. It's just all over the place, and with that type of volatility in his value, I think he's going to be held on to at least until the trade deadline. And if he's having a great year, I think he'd be going into free agency, and I think he would sign to the highest bidder. At that point at the trade deadline, that means you'd have to trade him. If he's playing poorly at the trade deadline and you don't think he's going to be a great fit long term, or you don't think he's going to sign with you long term because you're not going to offer him the biggest money, then maybe he leaves in free agency, and then again you trade him at the deadline. So just kind of some avenues for the Blue Jays to operate the rest of this season and into the trade deadline year as well. Yeah, everyone is coming up. Sammy nor Mayo is getting traded. Honestly, I think they're going to try to hold on to both of those guys, at least the way they're acting right now. Now's the time to invest in free agency. That's kind of my point there, Cowboys Nation. Let's see here. Sean, why would the Cubs trade with the Cardinals? Because they want the player the Cardinals have. That's kind of the easiest answer I can give you, Sean. Now, we've seen in-division trades before for relievers. I mean, the Mariners, even when they were in wild card contention, decided to go ahead and sell before the deadline, much to the chagrin of Cal Raleigh, their catcher. You might remember the trade that sent Kendall Graveman from the Mariners, their closer, to a division rival, a team also competing for the same playoff positioning, the Houston Astros. That would be, not the most common thing we've seen, but it's not out of the blue, never seen it before, completely out of character for MLB teams. I think Helsley should be traded before the regular season, and if the Cubs have the best offer, why wouldn't the Cardinals take it? Same reason goes for the Chicago Cubs. If their best option they believe is Ryan Helsley, and they have a good offer out there that they're comfortable making a deal with the Cardinals, why wouldn't they make a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals? We've seen trades between the Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees before, so why wouldn't we see one between the Cubs and Cardinals? Mike, if I was Chris, I trade for Mayo, but Job not in conversation, nor Skubal. You would trade for Mayo from the Orioles? Who would be the starting pitcher you would give up? Casey Mize, I suppose? That's not a number one. You wouldn't get Mayo for that. Not a bad comment there, Mike, but I just don't see, how that would really happen for you to get a guy of the caliber of Mayo on your roster. I get you have some, Spencer Torkelson has underperformed at first base. You moved over Colt Keith. We'll see how he performs this year, but I don't think we would see a trade of Mayo to Detroit unless you're giving up somebody like Skubal, and I don't think that'll happen, especially with them trying to compete for playoff positioning as well. Nando, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Flaherty bummed Dodgers didn't bring him back. It's still a possibility, but I would say it's very unlikely, especially with the number of starting pitchers that they already have on their roster. They're already going to be in a little bit of a roster crunch, but if there's an opportunity, I'm sure the Dodgers will try to do it. I can never rule them out of anything at this point. After they make the addition, after addition, after addition, after addition, after saying they don't have the money, that they continue after the deferrals, with all the money they're raking in, I just don't believe it anymore. I think the Dodgers can literally do anything they want. If they want Flaherty for literally one inning this year and then trade him, so be it. The Dodgers have that kind of flexibility financially to be able to do it. Now, am I saying that's going to happen? No. I'm just saying I can't rule out anything at this point with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Sean, how many years will Jansen sign for? If he gets a high AAV, say he gets like 1 year 12, 1 year 14, then I think he could get a 1 year deal. But I think he's going to end up signing a 2 for $16 million deal, somewhere in that range. I think worst case scenario for Jansen, he signs a 1 year, $8 million deal, but we'll see what happens there as well. Rafe, I've seen Astros fans saying that if they sign Bregman and then move Altuve to left field, your thoughts? Since Altuve said he would move positions for Bregman. Altuve's not moving off a second. I'm sure he could handle left field, but I think there's other options to move that infield around. Remember, Paredes has played the outfield as recently as last year, and I think he'd be a fit in the outfield as well. In left field, I think he could easily handle that. Right field might be a little bit more challenging with the amount of ground he would have to cover out there, but I think the Astros being still in the market for Alex Bregman is the shocking part. And the most shocking part of this whole thing about Alex Bregman is that he's the guy that reached out to the Astros to re-engage them in negotiations. Tells me the Tigers are not willing to budge on their number. He has hesitations about playing with the Blue Jays with their uncertain roster. He has hesitations, or at least the Boston Red Sox have hesitations about his fit long-term on the Red Sox. And so he just wants to get another team in there with a guaranteed contract of 6 for 156 or whatever the number is at now, to at least have another team still in the running there. We're getting closer to pitchers and catchers reporting every single day. Spring training is another day closer today than it was yesterday, and he will be signed, I'm guessing, at some point in the next week, maybe over the weekend. That's really what I'm hoping for at this point. But as far as moving positions, I'd say Paredes moves long before they move Jose Altuve. Welcome in, Hank. No matter what, there's always an upside. Sports Network. Appreciate you joining us, my friend. Thank you, Hank. Let's see here. Cowboys Nation, over or under fly balls over his head? Over Altuve's head? If he put him in left field, 0. Because, if they're going to go off of the wall there anyway with the Crawford boxes there in left, I think he could handle left field with the, odd angles there. But as far as fly balls over his head, those will go off the wall, high off the wall, or into the Crawford boxes. So I don't think he would have a worry there as well. Your voice volume is low. I'll try to speak up a little bit for you, Hank. Let's see here. Try to catch up on a few more of these comments. Rafe, knowing the Rangers, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rangers sign Jansen because the Rangers always seem to sign older pitchers, get what's left out of them and then move on. That's kind of my thought process there on Kyle Finnegan. They seem to always go for the peculiar fit at the back end of the bullpen. Remember, Will Smith signed during spring training. Kirby Yates only signed a 1 year, $4.5 million deal. Those were primarily their last two closers. They made the trade for Aroldis Chapman as well during the season. Obviously, he was their closer for a small period of time when Will Smith faltered, but ultimately was their primary setup guy. They've gone with Sean Tollison in the past, Jose Leclerc, Sam Dyson, among others. They just seem to go that route rather than, say, the $20 million guy at the back end of the bullpen. They try to go the homegrown route in the bullpen as well. Neftali Feliz, Alexi Agondo, and on the list really goes. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did something small in the bullpen, like a Kyle Finnegan, to give somebody proven at the back end of that bullpen and really finish off that bullpen. What a great job they've done rebuilding it, though, from what they've been able to do. Holly, what do you think about the Rangers moving John Gray to closer and trying to trade for Jordan Montgomery? He said today on the Weekly Rangers podcast he would do it and thinks it would be fun. I think they need the innings more than anything else from John Gray in that rotation. Now, if they bring in Jordan Montgomery, which I do think is a very legitimate possibility, still surprised the Diamondbacks haven't traded him by now, honestly. I think that would have already been done. But as far as John Gray to being a closer, I think he has the ability to do it. He's making $13 million this year. If he's not going to be in the rotation, you don't want him to be, the long reliever out of your bullpen. And I think, going into free agency, I think he would prefer to be a starter, but I think you could hold down closer for at least a little bit if you had to. But I still would prefer to go with another option instead. Jordan Montgomery in the rotation I think is necessary as well anyway, given the number of innings that they can really rely on, some of these options that they have. Most of the starters that the Rangers have in that rotation, I would only count on for, say, 120, 125 innings. And then beyond that is pure gravy. You're going to have to count on at least one, maybe two other pitchers getting about 100 innings as a starter this year in addition to the 5 guys that you're penciled into that starting rotation, or 6 guys, depending on how that rotation ultimately forms out. Cowboys Nation, Gray as your closer, yikes. I wouldn't say yikes. Gray's done it, at least in the postseason. In shorter sample sizes, his speed plays up. His command issues, can be a little bit more mitigated because you can handle those in the bullpen a little bit better by bringing in somebody else. But I think Gray's command issues will actually decrease because I think he'll perform better, trying to focus on that 1 or 2 innings that he's in there for. I would view him very much as a Josh Hader, a la the Milwaukee Brewers era Josh Hader, where he was able to come in for multiple innings as their closer or high leverage guy. I think that's the way they would utilize Gray in that type of a role. But for me, I still think they're going to go outside the organization, bring somebody in like a Kyle Finnegan or via trade Helsley, Duran, and try to solve their bullpen that way. Because I don't think they're going to trust, the young guys to start the season as their closer. I think they want to give them the opportunity to earn the job in spring training. And if for some reason Finnegan comes in and is absolutely terrible, you then put Finnegan as your, say, 7th inning option, put Martin as your 8th inning option, and then you put Church as your closers to start the year if he earns it out of spring training. Alrighty, Brandon, the Jays have so many second base, third base options. I just don't see Bo getting signed long term. That's kind of my thoughts as well, but I think the long-term future of the Blue Jays is in so much doubt. They don't really have any proven major league level talent. Chris Jimenez, I suppose, could be moved over to shorten a pinch if Bo Bichette leaves in free agency. But there's, I would still have kept Horowitz there. I kind of discussed that already, how I didn't really like the trade at the time. The trade for Straw I don't really mind because it's $15 million over 3 years. So be it. Guardians are eating $1 million, so it's really only like $12 million over 3 years. And you get the slot money there. I think that's going to be invaluable to a Blue Jays organization that could very well be going through a retool, rebuild process if this season goes poorly like we all expect as well. Quay, it's normal now. Not sure if it was just me. Okay, good. Glad to hear the sound is fixed. Sub-Zero, welcome back. Been a minute since I've seen you in our chat. Are the Yankees done? I feel like they need 2 relief pitchers and an infielder or 2. I would say 1 infielder. I don't think they have the roster flexibility to add 2. Maybe they could trade Cabrera there. That would be a possibility. But the Yankees certainly are not done. I would expect them to add at least a left-handed reliever. I know they were in the market for Tanner Scott. Maybe there's a reunion there with David Robertson. But those would be a couple of the arms I would be looking at. I understand Yankees fans continue to tell me Luke Weaver is their 8th inning option. Luke Weaver is the 8th inning guy. But he's such a great relief pitcher for them. I'd use him as a weapon in that bullpen and move him around. If you face Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman in the 7th inning, that's when you use Weaver. If you have the bases loaded, nobody out in the 6th inning, then you bring in Weaver to get yourself out of that jam. However, then you'd be left with a poor situation in the 8th inning that you'd normally use Luke Weaver in. So by bringing in another guy who can handle that role, like a David Robertson, like a Tanner Scott, I think that would be invaluable for a Yankees team that had bullpen struggles in the postseason. Part of the reason why they lost to the Dodgers was that bullpen, and I'd love to see them get another 8th inning option back there as well. Hank, they're not done. I agree with you there. Willard, do you think the Astros would trade Presley for an outfielder with restructured contract that the Cubs wanted to trade originally to include in the Tucker deal? No, I don't. I don't think they'll bring Suzuki to Texas or to the Houston Astros. I don't think there's any logic to that for Houston. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if they were to, I thought the process at the time there, the reason why they didn't bring in Suzuki is because they wanted to get the assets that they got and then have the money to go out there and go after a Anthony Santander. Instead, they brought in Christian Walker with that money. Great fit because they needed a first baseman and have needed one for years. But ultimately, they're going to have to go a little bit cheaper in that outfield. If they bring back Bregman, obviously their whole financial situation, they're going to have to figure that out because there's no way they're going to dip out underneath that tax threshold unless they do some type of cap gymnastics. They'd probably have to include some of these other teams like the Marlins, A's, Rays that need to add payroll in order to not have a grievance filed against them by the MLBPA. But that's something to kind of keep an eye on. As far as the Presley thing there, again, I don't think they're going to trade him for Suzuki. Now, they might try to get another one of the top minor league options that they were looking for in addition to Cam Smith. That would be the way I think they would prefer to go as well. Hank, Yankees still looking and being smart? Yes, they are. MP, welcome in. As a Dodgers fan, all I want is for them to re-sign Kike and trade for Arenado. Those are both options that I think are on the table. Like I said, after they've continued to say over and over again, oh, we don't have the money. We have to do deferrals. We don't have the roster flexibility. Baloney. There's two guys on that roster that I think currently make the opening day roster that they would love to move on some way, somehow. Rojas and Chris Taylor. If they can find a team to take on Taylor's contract, a la the Miami Marlins, then I think we could see a deal for Arenado and for Kike. I think Kike's positional flexibility would be invaluable for them. Arenado, I think, would give them some insurance if Freeman isn't quite himself as he returns from offseason surgery. Brandon, honestly, on the Bregman front, I wonder if the Jays rescinded the offer to Bregman. That offer may not be on the table anymore. That's a possibility. Maybe they're just trying to go a little bit more forward with Pete Alonso rather than Alex Bregman after they bring in Anthony Santander. For me, though, I think I'd rather go after Bregman. I'm not sure they would necessarily pull the offer entirely. They may have altered the offer, and that might be part of the impetus here for Bregman to get the Houston Astros back involved once again, to see if the other teams get a little bit more serious with their offers. I think Bregman's still going to do very well in free agency either way. Hank, you want Arenado? You want Arenado too? Yes, I want Arenado. He's my favorite non-Dodger player. Well, I hope you get him. I think he'd be a good fit with the Dodgers. Okay, certain good luck. I did see the Angels signed Tim Anderson. Utter catastrophe. Well, remember, it's a minor league deal. So if they get anything out of Tim Anderson, that's actually not a bad deal for them, because if he gets back to being the all-star caliber, shortstop, third baseman type player, I don't think he'll be their shortstop this year with Zach Neto still there. But maybe they use him at third base over Anthony Rendon. I think that's a legitimate possibility. They have been connected to Yohan Moncada. I think the signing of Tim Anderson might take him out of the running there. If they bring in Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman, if they do that quote-unquote big splash for one of those guys, then Tim Anderson obviously probably won't make the opening day roster. However, if they're smart and they decide to let Tim Anderson make the opening day roster, if he has any level of success, and they can trade him for some type of future asset, even if it's a guy outside of some team's top 30, it'd be well worth the signing for the Los Angeles Angels. The Tim Anderson signing, those smaller level contracts, the Kyle Hendricks type of a deal, those are the deals that they need to be making, not the Yusei Kikuchi deal for 3 years at $60 million, $63 million. Those are not the deals the Angels should be focusing on right now. This is a clear rebuild, a clear retool situation, and they need to be trying to be in asset acquisition mode rather than trying to get long-term contracts on their books. So that's kind of why I've been so against them bringing in guys like Santander, Alonso, Bregman, etc. is because now's the time to really develop your prospects, add assets, and signing guys to long-term contracts is not a great way to offload those salaries. You just block players in the minor leagues, and you decrease your draft position as well. Don't like the idea of adding proven talent like that to this roster, but Tim Anderson is the perfect type of signing for them, but we'll see what happens this season as well. Hank, Dodgers are going to be must-watch baseball for 10 years. Very likely. That's why I think their numbers, which were the best in baseball that we'd seen in decades as a road team, are going to be even better this year by a mile. First time we've seen a quote-unquote evil empire in baseball since the late 90s, early 2000 New York Yankees as well. Must-watch fall short as they fall short as they typically do. Well, the Dodgers have had their struggles in the postseason. That's what's going to make these teams that compete with the Dodgers in the postseason. I do think the Dodgers are going to make the postseason even if they struggle, even if they have injuries. I think they have so much talent on that roster, they'll be able to overcome it one way or another. Now, if they have the absolute worst injury luck in the history of baseball, maybe they don't win the division. But I think they are still guaranteed at this point a wild card spot. But to your point there, the Dodgers have had their fair share of struggles in the postseason. And like I keep saying, you still have to go out there and play the actual games. Alrighty, Hank, Maddox is a great asset for Grat. Maddox is a great asset for Gray. Yes, he is. I'm sure that he'll bring in John Smoltz as well to kind of talk about the transition from starting pitcher to closer if they did something like that. Cowboys Nation Freddie won't carry them every postseason. True, but Ohtani wasn't a pitcher this year. And by around the All-Star break, I would expect them to have Kershaw in that rotation. I'd expect them to have Ohtani back in that rotation. And we'll see how well they perform. But again, a lot of injury red flags. And like I said, they still have to win it on the field rather than just in the back of the baseball card, on paper, in the offseason type of a team. They have to go out there and win on the field. Rafe, I don't see why buying a ring is such a bad thing. That's the point of free agency. Fill holes with better players available. Props to teams doing it. That's kind of my thoughts as well. I don't hate teams for spending the money. They're just trying to use the rules to the best of their advantage, just like everybody else. Do they have a different financial framework with which to work? Absolutely. But the advantages for smaller market teams are you get more international bonus pool money. Those type of things. You get qualifying offers. If the team does lose a player, then they get the compensation as well. There are ways to recoup some value on those smaller market teams. Now, you could argue that there should be stricter penalties. We discussed that yesterday. How the NBA does the first apron and second apron, it limits the types of transactions that you can make, how assets can be traded, what type of assets you can trade for. Maybe something like that would help Major League Baseball kind of curb the top level of spending. Setting in a floor would be a possibility as well to try to get these smaller market teams to kind of bump up their payrolls a little bit. But all of those things are still on the table. But I do not hate any of these teams for adding major players to the roster, because again, it's all about trying to win. And I'm not going to fault any team for trying to do their best to win or quote unquote buy free agents. So we'll see here. Cowboys Nation's prop to the markets that have the ability to do it? Absolutely. Willard, do you think the Astros will try to trade it for a restructured contract for an outfielder that was originally included in the Tucker trade? No, I don't think they're going to go after Seiyu Suzuki. That was the guy we were talking about there. I think they'd rather go a little bit cheaper in the outfield. They were connected to Jerks and Profar. Obviously, he has signed 3 for $42 with the Atlanta Braves. Love that deal, but he will not be a member of the Houston Astros. They have been connected to Alex Verdugo and Randall Grichuk. Honestly, I'd like them to sign both of those guys. And if they can get Bregman, so be it. But I think they could get Verdugo and Grichuk with the $11 million that they'd have underneath the tax if they traded Ryan Presley. So that's something I would look for, is them to add some outfielders to that mix. To me, they just need more talent in that outfield. Verdugo would bring it. I think he'd be a better all-around player. And then you have Randall Grichuk, who's a really good platoon player. Maybe you platoon both of them, but adding somebody to that outfield mix is still a hole on that Astros roster. MP, let's see here. Correct. Let's see here. Tex Louie, thank you. We have a good team, although it doesn't guarantee World Series. After all, it is baseball. Hopefully we can win a couple of World Series in the next 10 years. It's kind of my point there. They do have to win it on the field. Said winning 5 to 7 in the next 12 years. That might be a little steep. I don't think they'd win 5 to 7 World Series there. Hank, I feel bad for whoever gets traded to Anaheim. Yeah, that'd be a little rough. Unless you're a prospect, I think if you get into the a rebuilding team and you're a young player, say you're 16, 17 years old, signing through the international bonus pool money, signing with a team that has a bunch of good young talent coming as well. 1, it gives you great competition to test yourself against. 2, it means that once you get up to competing at the MLB level as a group, then you're going to have a great team all at the same time. That's when you all hit the major league level at that same time. Now, I can see the negative side of the coin as well. I do see the fact that you're going to have some greater competition, which means you might not reach the upper levels of the minors. You might wash out a little bit earlier. You might get traded in another deal. But that's just the facts of life. You have to still go out there and prove that you're the best. And I would welcome the challenge if I were in a rebuilding situation. Cowboys Nation, Timmy hasn't been the same since his hip issue. Absolutely. Pretty sure he has his chip a few years back. That's kind of the issue with Tim Anderson. That and his swing just has not been right. Hopefully he can correct that. MP, let's see if Freddie returns. He never had an injury before, at least not that I'm aware of. Yeah, Freddie Freeman's been very, very durable. I remember he's had off-season surgery in the past with the Atlanta Braves, but he's never really missed any major league time as well. He was one of my favorite Braves after Chipper Jones retired. And, I was a little bit stunned to see him go to the Dodgers, but not too surprised when I saw the plan, at least, for the Atlanta Braves to bring in Matt Olson. So Kind of made sense for them as far as finances. And LA ultimately gets Freddie Freeman as well. Let's see here. Great weather. All right. Rafe, I know we talked 99.9% of baseball on here, but why did Liam Cohen lie to the Bucks about being ill, and that's why he was ignoring them instead of telling them he was looking into the Jags head coaching job? I heard that he actually was not interested in the Jags job originally, and that's why he wasn't going to interview again. He had already interviewed, and then it sounded like the Jags were looking to do a second interview, and he said, thanks, but no, I've decided to stay with the Bucks. And then we get the headline that he was going to, interview again, and now it looks like he's going to be their head coach. Like, just complete debacle there. I'm not saying that Cohen's not going to be a good coach, but I find it interesting how Canales goes from being their OC to the Panthers head coach, and then 1 year of Liam Cohen, now he's going to be the head coach of the Jags. Just very interesting how that job has become a springboard for NFL head coaches. Mike, man, appreciate you joining us once again. I'm not sure if I've seen you in our chat recently anyway, but if you're new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Really goes a long way to helping us out here. We just crossed midnight Central Time, so appreciate you guys sticking it out on a late live show with us tonight. A lot to get to in baseball today, a lot of headlines. Jerks and Profar, 3 for 42 to the Atlanta Braves. The Santander deal becomes official with $61 million in deferrals of the $92 million. Overall contract is 6 years, or as 5 years with an option for a 6th year that could bring the value with bonuses up to 110. He basically gets the deal he was looking for. Profar to me gets even better than what I was expecting. Absolutely great. Again, I absolutely love the player, so I'm very happy he's finally getting a longer-term contract, and I'm hoping he does great things with the Atlanta Braves. Just really hoping him nothing but the best. Other news that we saw, again, Tanner Scott became official. Kirby Yates is still a tentative agreement. Still don't know any of the finances there. Pete Alonso is making, quote-unquote, advancing talks with the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll see if they can get that one across the finish line. Bregman has reached out to the Houston Astros about the availability, about their contract offer. They've had a standing offer of 6 for 156. We'll see if he goes back there. Again, the interesting note there is that Bregman reached out to the Houston Astros, not the other way around. The Minnesota Twins have discussed a couple of trades with the San Diego Padres. One sending Christian Vazquez to the Padres in exchange for a small package. Obviously makes a lot of sense. The second trade between the two does not make much sense because, again, Twins are in a little bit of a pickle financially. They're trying to sell the team. Doesn't make sense for them to acquire a number one starting pitcher who's going to be a free agent after the year when you might be looking to offload salary on that roster already. Maybe you're trying to make it one last hurrah, go all in for 2025, but that doesn't make sense either. I don't get the conversation around Dylan Cease. I saw a couple of the Twins podcasts the last 24 hours or so. One guy was all in on it, and I'm like, you're really willing to give up the long-term assets it would take to bring in Dylan Cease rather than just keep the assets that you got and rebuild for the future, which you're going to have to do after the year anyway? You're out of your gourd, man. This is the time where you should be trying to add assets, not subtract. They did a great job bringing in Diego Cartaya, taking advantage of the Los Angeles Dodgers, designating him for assignment. He could be the catcher of the future there if he regains his prospect status that we once expected for him from the Los Angeles Dodgers. He was never going to break through with the way the catching has really worked out there in Los Angeles. And so getting an opportunity with the Minnesota Twins, who have been dying for a good catcher ever since Joe Mauer retired, or even since before he retired, really, and became a DH first base guy only, Diego Cartaya could be a long-term answer, something that could build them for the future as well. But those are some of the big headlines that we saw today. I'm sure I'm missing a few others. The Kyle Finnegan market is really heating up, according to multiple sources. The Chicago Cubs have reached out to Carlos Estevez, so have the Cincinnati Reds. Ryan Presley has been the subject of trade talks with the Chicago Cubs as well. Detroit seems to be stuck on their number around Alex Bregman. Seems like Toronto and Boston are still in there for Bregman, but Bregman doesn't like the numbers or doesn't like the idea of playing for either of those teams. Or he's just trying to play one team against the other by getting the Astros back involved as well. Rangers are still looking for a closer. Maybe they're a fit for Kyle Finnegan. Cardinals are still looking to move on from Nolan Arenado before the start of the regular season. Looks like he'll be a spring training trade if a team has an injury at third, first, or DH. I would expect that team to reach out to them as well. And again, I'm not ruling out the Dodgers of anything at this point, including the idea of bringing in Nolan Arenado. So that was kind of a quick rundown of all the headlines that we saw today. I'm sure I'm missing a few others as well. But Mike, man, to your comment here, are the Rangers done? The more I look at the roster, I think we're done. I still think they're looking for a closer. Now, do they bring back Kirby Yates? Doesn't look like they're going to try to get in there and steal him away from the Dodgers, even though they may or may not have a tentative agreement pending a physical, etc., whatever that may mean. Until he signs on the dotted line, he's still a free agent. I just don't think Texas is going to go down that road. The options that are left on free agent market, you've got Kenley Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, Carlos Estevez, and Kyle Finnegan. Of those options, I think they could go with Estevez. I think there's an outside chance they go with Jansen. I don't think Kimbrell's too big of an option anyway for Texas. And then the last one, Kyle Finnegan, I think that gives them kind of the quickest bridge to Mark Church to Josh Sborz, because if Finnegan regains the form that he had before the All-Star break, they got a great pitcher. If he doesn't, they can quickly see if Mark Church has earned the job in spring training and then put him as closer to begin the season. And if that doesn't work out, Josh Sborz will be back around the trade deadline, around the All-Star break, and then they could put him back there at closer. There's also the option of putting John Gray back there. I don't like that one as much, but I think there is a natural fit there for them to bring in a closer. I think they brought in, 5 relievers so far? I don't think all of them ultimately start the season with the club. I think they'll have options in some of those guys that they signed. They'll have guys that ultimately start the season on the injured list. Just having a much better, more experienced bullpen is going to go a long way for the Texas Rangers, who've had bullpen issues each of the last 2 years, including the year they won the World Series. Hank, I think you get 2 because Ohtani already predicted it as a child in his time thing. Okay. No way we are done. I agree there. I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I see a playoff team. You see a playoff team for who? For Anaheim? I don't see that. Okay. Okay, JS, welcome in. I want a closer, but I think we're going to win. We're the division favorite. Yes, I would say that as well, but I still think they need a closer. JS, best Ranger candidate for a breakout season. Can it be a breakout season for Wyatt Langford? For me, I think he's going to elevate from a very good pro to a all-star caliber challenge Corey Seager for the best player on the team level. I think that's the kind of breakout candidate we're going to see. Outside of that, I would look at Josh Young, Kumar Rocker, and Evan Carter in that order. Josh Young, I think if he can put a full season together healthy, you guys are going to be surprised at how good his offensive numbers really look and how much better this offense really works as well. Jonah Heim just getting back to being a respectable option behind the plate would be a great breakthrough season for him as well. He's been really overworked the last couple of years. That's the thought process in bringing Kyle Higashioka in as a second catcher there, 1A, 1B guy there. Take Jonah Heim off his feet for a little bit, let him get some rest on the days he doesn't need to be in the lineup. Rather than trying to overwork him because you need a DH with some power, and so you just say, hey, Jonah, go out there and do it. Last year he was one of the worst offensive players in the entire league, and that needs to be addressed because if it doesn't, he could easily be a non-tender candidate after the season. But that's another guy there. But as far as breakout candidates, Evan Carter, obviously, 2 different back injuries, just coming in and having a very solid rookie season. Well, I say rookie. He's lost his rookie label anyway. But a solid second season I think would be great for him as well. Let's see. Cowboys Nation, Ohtani didn't look near as dominant in his last season pitching. I personally wouldn't let him pitch, but that's what the price tag is. He's mid-tier at this point for 2 Tommy Johns now? I wouldn't say mid-tier. I'd still say Ohtani's in the, top, we'll call it top 40, top 50 pitchers in the game. How many teams are there in the sport? We're talking, 30 teams times 2? That means he's still a number 2 on somebody's staff. And I think he is able to get back to the level we expect of Shohei Ohtani. I think he can still get back to a Cy Young level pitcher, even with hitting and pitching. But he did it. He won the MVP as a DH only. Tells you how impactful the guy really is, both in the lineup and as a pitcher. I think if he was a pitcher only, he'd be even better as well. But Ohtani, I think, is the trump card for the Dodgers right now because they can utilize him both ways. Mike, this offseason, I don't think there's any moves left to make with this payroll. Well, they have roughly 15 to 20 million left after how they structured Eovaldi's deal, how they structured Jock Peterson's deal. Now, there's two ways they could view this. One, they could spend a little bit of it now, bring in Jordan Montgomery, say they get the Diamondbacks to eat, say, $15 million of that. You spend 7 of that 15 to 20 left on him. Then you spend, say, $7 million of that's left on Kyle Finnegan. That takes up the last bits of your salary. Say you include Ezekiel Duran going out, saves you a little bit of money. Then you have like $2, $3, $4 million, maybe $7 million left with to play with at the deadline. That'd be one way to go. The other option is not bringing in anybody else and just keeping the roster as is. I'm not sure they do that either. Let's see here. We won with Jose Leclerc. Yes, you did. Jose Leclerc is a very underrated player in Texas Ranger history. Just remember, he was a part of the last bits of those successful teams that we had with Cole Hamels, Sam Dyson, with that era of Texas Rangers. Then he was there through the entire rebuild process, and then he was there again when we won the World Series. Just, a good Texas Ranger. Was he ever as good as we really hoped he would be? No, but we never really expected him to be a number one starter. We never really expected him to be a number one closer, but at times he proved to be a great closer option back there. The track record for him in the minors always command, and that's what the issues we saw at the major league level. So hats off to Jose Leclerc on a contract I think he actually lived up to with Texas. Remember, it was a 5-year, $15 million deal. Not a big contract, especially for a reliever. And that contract actually worked out pretty well for Texas. Now he gets 1 year, $10 million with the A's. To me, that's a big overpay, but I'm happy he was able to parlay his success over the last couple of years into a big payday like that. 90 wins. 90 wins might win the division, I will say that. Try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Got quite a few in here. Robert Garcia. I love the idea of Robert Garcia in this bullpen as well. But I think they're going to give, kind of an open competition for that closer role if they bring in Kyle Finnegan. The odds-on favorite will be to start the season with Finnegan back there, but if he doesn't live up to it, or if one of those two young guys, ultimately seizes the job, it'll be theirs to lose. He's pitching, bro. He's going to pitch. Yes, he will. Mike, that's a good point, but they're behaving as if it's cool, but it's scary because we don't know. I get that. Where is the money going to come from is legitimate concern for us. For the Rangers, they have the money. Remember, they shoehorned the contracts of Eovaldi and Jock Peterson to where they could have some backloaded deals there. Takes a little bit of money away from future years, but the Rangers aren't necessarily too worried about that because Jock could obviously opt out at the end of this year as well. For sure, I just think his bat, let's see here, money is a concern, etc. For sure, I just think his bat is far more valuable than his arm. Okay, for Ohtani, I just think he's valuable both ways. Having a starting pitcher is always going to be more valuable than an everyday player in the field if you have a true ace. Now, if Ohtani can get to that level, obviously he's more valuable as a pitcher. But there has been discussion about moving him to, among media types anyway, to a relief role. That way you can utilize him more often in games as a, pitch him a couple of innings to face the team's best hitters in a couple of innings and just kind of save his arm that way. I'm not sure that the Dodgers would use him or utilize him that way. I think it'd be harder on his body to do something like that. Getting hot, for just a couple of innings, sitting back down, if he, has to go back-to-back days. Those are all big question marks. I think he's going to stay in that rotation, though. You had 8 All-Stars who just didn't hit. Yeah, they just really didn't hit last year. That's very true. Completely fine trading Gray. Honestly, I'd be as well, but I need some more innings before I do so. So if I bring in Jordan Montgomery, then I'd be willing to move John Gray, but not before then, Mike. Rafe, he said no to the Jags because Balky was the GM. Now he's gone, so he wants the job. Makes some sense, but he also told the Bucks his daughter was ill. I didn't hear the ill daughter part, but I did hear that he had backed out of the situation, then said, hey, I'll go ahead and take a second interview. But I guess they really liked him as far as the head coach, and I guess he's going to have a lot of power in that organization if he really did get Trent Baalke fired, even though I think Baalke should have been gone anyway. Mike, if we trade him, I'd spend the money on Kenley Jansen. I don't think that they need to trade John Gray to bring in Kenley Jansen. They have the money to do it, even without trading John Gray. But I do think they will add some type of a closer. They got Hott and Corey Seager, absolutely. Rafe, and apparently there was talk with the Bucks about an extension to be one of the highest paid coordinators in the game. Makes some sense. That team was very good offensively, but remember that success with Dave Canales. Now it continues with Liam Cohen. How much of this is just the offensive talent that they have there in Tampa Bay, with Mike Evans, with Ricard White, with Bucky Irving, with Chris Godwin, the tight end Cade Otton. They have a good offensive group there, and Baker Mayfield is letting it rip there in Tampa Bay. I wonder how much of that is the coordinator succeeding. I think Dave Canales really proved his worth with Bryce Young this year, but how much of the success this year with Liam Cohen, something to kind of keep in mind as well. Cowboys Nation, not saying the roster was trash by any means. What do you think about Glenn taking the Jets head coaching job, returning home? I think that's what it says about them. Jets, once again, go defense for a head coach. They've done that 6 out of the last 7 head coaching hires. I would have liked them to do something a little bit different, but I love Aaron Glenn as a human being. Love him as a player. Liked him when he was with the Dallas Cowboys and with the Jets, and I'm hoping he has long-term success there with the Jets. And they just need a quarterback, period. Aaron Rodgers is not it anymore. He is washed. What is your prediction for the 25 season? Clubber Lang, Payne. Prediction for the 25 season in what regards, Hank? We talking, will they make the playoffs? Yes. I'd say the Yankees, probably on paper right now, are the best team in the AL. I'd pick them to make the World Series. Rangers, once they get a closer in there, and I want to see how Heim returns this season. I want to see how Evan Carter returns, Josh Young. They could easily be in that conversation. But we've already discussed this a little bit. I think I had the Yankees winning the AL East. I had the Tigers I had winning the Central, Rangers winning the West. I had the Mets winning the NL East. I had the Brewers winning the Central. I had the Dodgers winning the NL West. Wild cards I had were the Orioles if they add a number 1. I had the Guardians in there, and I had the Astros, I believe. With the Royals, depending on how the impact of Jonathan India works out for them, they might surprise us. But those would be the teams that I would pick. Dodgers and Yankees once again in the series. Dodgers winning, at least on paper. That's my prediction. Now, I still think the Rangers have a good chance in the AL, just like if the Orioles add a starting pitcher, number 1, I think they could be in that conversation to win the series. On the NL side, I think the Mets are going to add somebody to that lineup at the deadline and add a number 1 starter as well. I think the Mets are too good of a team not to make huge investments at the deadline. Rafe, Reds signing Estevez according to Reds pages. They are in deep talks right now. I did hear that yesterday. I would not be surprised if that deal became official tomorrow. We'll actually check in on X here in just a moment before we head out for the evening. Rangers make the playoffs, yes. Okay, best candidate, agree, Wyatt. Leody Tavares, I mean, he is working on his swing. Heim has been working on his swing. A lot of the guys have stayed in Texas to kind of fix their issues that they had last year. I'm ready for opening day as well. JS, yeah, Langford September was unreal. Rangers offense definitely suffered without Young. Couldn't agree more, but that offense had more issues than just Josh Young's absence. Adolis had a down year, was injured most of the year after that collision with Marcus Semien. Semien had his typical down year after a good year. I'm hoping for another good year as well. Back issues for Evan Carter, I'm hoping those are behind him. They've kind of solved some nerve issues back there, big scary issues, but hopefully those are long-term solutions that they've discovered for him. And he's got to learn how to hit left-handed pitching. Leody's got to learn how to handle left-handed pitching. I wonder if they bring in somebody as a minor league option to push those guys as a right-handed hitter that can handle lefties. So we'll see what they do there. Leody is the man. I mean, he's great defensively. Really liked his potential when he was coming up through the Ranger system, but he hasn't been consistent enough at the major league level offensively for me to trust him every day in my outfield. He's a great fourth outfielder, great defensively, but for me, I need a little bit more consistency from him offensively, and if he can get back to being that player we saw a couple of years ago, I think he could easily win that center field job if Evan Carter continues to struggle against lefties. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. No, you're good, Hank. You're good. J.S. Leody is actually my favorite Ranger. He's in probably my top 10, but I wouldn't say he's my favorite, at least on the current team. Certainly not of all time, but Leody's a good player. I have several rookie cards of his. Nothing like opening day, Hank. Yes, absolutely. I've been to one opening day, and I would love to go to another. Let's see here. Try to catch up on the rest of these. Okay, I'm dead serious. I have 6 one-of-ones. One is a PSA 10. That's pretty awesome. I do not have any, one-of-ones for Leody at all. I do have a PSA 10, just kind of a standard rookie card of his, and I got a couple of autos, I think. I haven't looked at my Leote collection in a while. I'm missing an important piece, yellow printing plate, 1 of 1, chrome, Leote Tavares, and other 3 plates autos. That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty good Leote Tavares collection there, my friend. JS, I only have 1 of 50 auto jersey card, same parallel rookies of Leote. That's a pretty good one as well. Freudian slip. Well, Leote was really bad last year. I'm hoping he fixed it in winter ball and looks okay. He mainly stayed in Dallas, worked with the new hitting coaches there, and that's going to be the reason for his success. Is if that success that he had with the hitting coaches really pays off. And we saw those guys have success out there in San Francisco. We'll see if they can work their magic again here. It's a make or break time. I think he can do it with Ezekiel and Adolis in his corner. True. I think that those are kind of the 3 amigos, like you mentioned there, Hank. Very good. I had a few drinks, Mike. I'm sorry I forgot what I was saying. You're good. You're good. First prediction is wrong. About the Yankees, I mean, I still think they're a very good team. Are they as good of a team as they were last year during the regular season? I think they're a better team than they were last year. But I think in the playoffs, that's when it's really going to come down to, do they miss Juan Soto? Do the pieces rise in the playoffs? Do they shrink underneath the bright lights? Those are all big questions. And you never know how somebody's going to handle playing in New York until they actually play in New York. Can Devin Williams handle the spotlight? Can Max Fried handle the spotlight? Is Goldschmidt going to have a nice rebound season, resurrect his career? Is Bellinger going to continue to be the player that he's been with the Chicago Cubs, or is he going to regress to the player that he was at the end with the Dodgers? All of those that are things that are all possible for the Yankees as well. Please tell me, okay. Leote didn't go to winter ball. He stayed in Texas. Yes. Cowboys Nation 130, and I'm talking MLB. Love it. I guess you are on the East Coast. As an Oriole fan, I imagine you're on the East Coast anyway. Why didn't he go? Because he wanted to work on his swing. That's why he didn't go to winter ball or anything like that. He wanted to stay in Dallas to work with the Texas Rangers on his swing more than anything else. Rafe, if Heim has another down year, are you done with him? As you know, he's my favorite player on the team outside of Seager Simeon, and I'd hate to see him go. If he has another year like he did last year, I guarantee he will be non-tendered. There is no way the Rangers are going to pay him, $5, $7, $8, $9, $10 million if he's one of the worst offensive players in the game. I don't care how good his offense is. We just saw what they did with Kisner, and if they're getting his level of performance out of Jonah Heim, completely unacceptable. The Rangers then would go into free agency next year with a big hole at catcher that they would have to solve. So they're hoping Jonah Heim can get back on the right track. I think he will. But if he performs as poorly as he did last year, unquestionably they will DFA him. It is a big year for Jonah Heim this year. Doley stayed too. Yes, he did. I'm hoping Adolis just stayed for health reasons because he really needed to get right after that collision. We saw his numbers in the first 2 months of the year before May, or through May anyway. Then he had that collision at the end of May with Marcus Semien, and then you can see a complete drop in his numbers. Let's see here. I don't think he has another bad season just playing the what-if game. I think he's going to have a better year as well. I'm just saying that if he does have another one that bad, he's gone. As much as we like him, as much as I like him, he gone. Leote's home run against Verlander in Game 1 of the ALCS was an epic memory. Absolutely. I remember that one. I remember the one he hit in Tampa Bay as well to kind of finish off that team. Let's see here. How bad was he last year? We're talking one of the worst. What was it? He was around, 623rd in the entire game? 523 out of 526. For a period of time, he was literally the very worst, the dead last, worst performer offensively in the game last year. That's how bad Jonah Heim was last year offensively. Kisner was better. Anybody you can think of in the sport was a better hitter than Jonah Heim last year. Let's see here. I must be the biggest Tavares hater because I don't see him being a good player and I want him gone. I'm not necessarily a Tavares backer either. I just think that Evan Carter is the future in center field. I think Tavares needs to solve that swing, and until he proves it to me, I can't play him every day. Now, Bruce Bochy and the manager staff there, they love his defensive versatility and love his speed game, and so he's going to get pretty good playing time as well. Dolly's latest post on Instagram was he was sprinting very fast. That's never been the issue. It was kind of his upper body where he had the issues last year with the collision, and we'll see what happens with him. But I love Adolis as a player. I just wonder if this is the last year of Adolis on this roster, because I think he could be headed towards free agency next year and may find another home next year, but we'll see. Hank, your point of view is understandable, but if not the correct outlook, appreciate you, Hank. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys taking time with us this evening. A little bit of a late start tonight and a longer pod for you guys, or longer YouTube video for you guys. But I want to say thank you guys for joining us. Let's head over to X and just see if anything else has happened this evening since we've been live. I don't think anything has, but we shall see. I watched Heim last season here at Camden. I could tell he definitely KM 3 to 10 times. Yeah, he had a big hole in his swing on both sides of the plate. I think they tried to work with him a little bit on just one side of the plate last year towards the end, and it didn't work out. They weren't able to get him right, and hopefully having a full offseason to just get rested, hopefully we'll get him back in the right swing of things. I'm sure the new hitting coaches are working with him on the swing as well. Do you think Jock is practicing with first base coach just in case, see if they can have him more flexibility with them? Texas has said they're going to utilize him in the field, both at first base and in the outfield. So don't be surprised if we see Jock Peterson, say, play 10 games in the outfield this year, if we see him at first base for, say, 10 to 20 games this year as well. But he primarily will be a DH in this lineup. Don't get it confused. He will be, pinch ran for at times. He'll be defensively substituted for if he ever is in the field. But the Rangers said they're going to utilize him more than just a DH. I would expect him to be utilized at least 20 games in the field this year, if not more. His knee was giving him issues at the end of last year. I do remember that as well. But that collision was the main issue for him throughout the second half of the year. Really, since the end of May on, that was the issue, was the collision. Leote has to have a banger year or he's gone, so it's a win-win for you. I think that's kind of the thought process there as well. Leote is going to have to prove himself this year, and if he does, I think he could get an extension with Texas. If he doesn't, I think he's going to be traded at some point, either at the deadline to bring in some other piece or in the offseason, but we shall see. All right, looks like we did get a minor league deal with the Diamondbacks signing Josh Winder from the Twins. I remember J.B. Bukowskis, former top pick, I believe, of the Blue Jays back in the day. Maybe of the Astros, one of the two anyway, is now in the minors for the Brewers. The Rays have added Eisert. That was the bullpen guy from AAA who has good numbers, but a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is the reason why Toronto never utilized him in a bullpen that absolutely could have used him. But the Rays are taking advantage here, and we'll see what happens with him. If the Rays are picking up that guy, means things are things could be looking up for his career. And then, of course, Alex Bregman is still in talks with the Astros, and that's about it. We'll head over to MLB trade rumors. Nothing there. Profar again. The big news of the day: 3 years, $42 million to the Atlanta Braves. Waiting for the 10-year extension with Heim. That's never going to happen for a catcher. Certainly not with Jonah Heim. I don't care how good your catcher is behind the plate. You're not giving 10 years to a catcher. Now, as far as, say Jonah Heim gets back to being an MVP, all-star level player, then you might discuss things as far as a, 4, 5, 6, maybe a 7-year contract. But for a catcher, you're not going 10 years at all, ever. Sorry, not going to happen. But a long-term extension, if he has a great year, I don't think would be out of the question. But he's got to get better there. Rays are solid at developing arms, solid snag by them. I agree. A guy who hasn't really been given a chance at the major league level. The Rays are scooping him up. Obviously, they see something. I see something in him, too. We'll see if he can live up to that potential there. Again, just to recap the headlines before we head out. Braves get Jerkson Profar. He'll be their everyday outfielder for the month of April until Acuna is ready to play every day. And then he'll move to a fourth outfielder role, multi-positional player. Really love the deal, love the player, love the contract, love everything about this for them. They're still going to try to add at least a couple of bullpen options there on a shoestring budget, so do not expect anything crazy. They are now going to be out on Jack Flaherty. Flaherty's market, I think, is now down to teams like the Blue Jays, teams like the Detroit Tigers, the Baltimore Orioles to a lesser extent, teams like that. Pete Alonso is advancing in talks with the Blue Jays. We'll see if that one gets across the finish line. The deal became official with Tanner Scott with the Dodgers. Still trying to get the deal across the finish line with Kirby Yates, but still have a tentative agreement in place. Texas is still looking for a closer right now that Kirby Yates looks like he's going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. They have been connected to a couple of relievers on the free agent market. Kenley Jansen, Carlos Estevez. I doubt they'll reach out to Craig Kimbrell. One other name that I believe they've been connected to today anyway was Kyle Finnegan. His market has certainly picked up. Great first half, terrible second half. Rangers, that's kind of a buy low candidate that would allow them to at least start the season with him at closer. If he's great, so be it. If not, they have in-house options that would at least have an opportunity to close until Josh Sborz is ready, or they add somebody at the deadline as well. Bregman reached out to the Houston Astros as well today to see if that contract offer was still available and to see if that contract offer would be a little bit higher. And it's interesting that Bregman's camp reached out to Houston, not the other way around. So something to kind of keep in mind there as well. I'm sure I'm missing a few other things. The Mets deal with A.J. Minter became official as well. But quite an active day in MLB. I told you guys once the calendar turned to 25, we would see nonstop action on the free agent market, and every single day we've seen some type of addition here or there. I know, I just want to see the man succeed with the Rangers or not. I'm hoping for the best for Jonah. I really am. Great dude. And I wish him nothing but the best there. Speaking of, how do you see Shane McClanahan bouncing back for the Rays successfully? I think they'll be a little bit more delicate with him, so just like Sandy Alcantara with the Marlins, DeGrom with the Rangers. I think they'll have them with kid gloves for at least the first half of the year, but hopefully has a nice bounce back year as well. Catchers are like boxers, fighters. Everyone has a number, and no one knows how many number or what that number is until it's too late. Absolutely. That's why you can't give a catcher a 10-year deal. Rafe, with all the love that one player, whether he is amazing or not, Heim is that guy for me. I do like Jonah Heim, the player. Not my favorite Ranger, not even my favorite catcher as a Ranger, but he is probably my top 5 catchers for the Rangers, at least my favorites, not in the history of the Rangers organization. But of my favorites, love the guy. He's just got to perform better. I mean, I don't think you guys realize just how poorly he performed last year. It was that awful. Every single time the Rangers needed a big hit, he was coming up to bat. They tried to use him as pinch hitter, DH, try to keep his bat in the first half of the year because they thought he was the guy to do it. And fail, without doubt, every single time. He struggled to come through in those situations. And it continued into the second half. Now, the Rangers as a team really struggled to hit against the fastball. That's why they bring in 2 guys who really mash against the fastball in Jake Berger and Jock Peterson. We'll see if some of those hitting tools rub off on some of those other guys as well. One guy who really struggled against the fastball, Nathaniel Lowe, has been traded as well. Agree, Rafe. Mullins is that guy for me. His bat struggles, but he is, in my opinion, one of, if not the best defensive center fielder in the league. Mullins' bat has really regressed. I will say that. He's starting to lose a little bit of that speed to me as well. At least when I notice him playing, it just doesn't look quite as quick. The twitch isn't quite there. Center fielders usually have a shorter career, and so Mullins may have another year or 2 left at this level of production, and then things might really fall, or the wheels might really fall off the bus at that point. Mullins was a road to show GOAT for me for years ago. I do love Cedric Mullins, but I do think the end is nigh for him in the next couple of years as well. You meant franchise. Yes. Franchise mode. Yes. Franchise mode is really the only thing I play, mainly because I do the trades, and I like doing that kind of a thing on the show as well. Alrighty, appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be live again tomorrow night around 9 o'clock. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe and sticking with us through this longer live. I really do appreciate all your support. Thank you for the super chats and all the new subscribers. You guys checking out our videos during the day. We'll have a video coming out tomorrow, probably about the Cowboys head coaching search. We'll probably do one about baseball as well. So be sure to check out those videos we'll be making tomorrow morning as well. They tried to trade him soon and move Cowser over. Possibly, but I'm not sure how much value Mullins has on the open market. Maybe he's going to be stuck there. I think Cowser's not going to be moved, that's for sure. I love Cowser on that roster. He was actually in the Rangers wiffle ball game that they just had for charity the other day. He was down at the Rangers ballpark doing that. So, good guy. He was apparently friends with, was it Josh Young's wiffle ball game? Somebody's wiffle ball game for the Rangers. Anyway, Cowser came in and was one of the MLB players that was on that wiffle ball squad. They have a little bit of a tournament anyway. he was there for that. But appreciate you guys. Y'all get some rest. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Stay warm, everybody.